Well, joining me now to talk more about the African Union meeting and what kind of influence both China and the United States may have on policies on the African continent is Nii Akuetteh, an international affairs analyst. Nii, thanks for joining us again.
Pleasure to be back.
Before we get to the influence that China and the United States might have on Africa, let's look at the conference itself. You know, this also marks the 50th anniversary of the formation of the OAU.
Yes.
At that time, grand vision, ambitious plans, but if we look at what the Secretary General of the African Union is saying right now, you know, basic things like healthcare, education, especially higher education, infrastructure, Africa's got a lot of work, eh?
It does. It does. And, you know, I in particular, on personal privilege, I remember I was a school kid in Accra, Ghana, when all the independence happened and the formation of the OAU to begin with. And so the progress Africa has made, and it has made some progress, but of course it's never enough. You know, President Nyerere, former President Nyerere of Tanzania once said that when we look at the world and in terms of development, where other people have walked, we must run. So clearly Africa is not running fast enough, but we need to understand that we have made some progress. We need to just challenge ourselves to do more.
Okay, let's get to Chinese and U.S. influence in Africa. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry will be going to this summit in Addis Ababa. He says the United States is concerned at growing Chinese influence in Africa. So what's the message he's going to be taking?
I hope his message is that the United States is going to compete with China in a good way in terms of who can help Africa more. I think that if that is the meaning behind his words, then it is good for China, it is good for Africa, and it is good for the United States, because these three big areas of the world need to be doing things, and the U.S. and China can challenge each other as to who has the better policies and relationships with Africa.
Is this a competition for resources in Africa?
I think it should be a competition for better relations. Of course, resources are part of it, but it is not a matter of giving something away. It's a matter of fair trade. It's a matter of a healthy relationship.
Mm-hmm. Well, he's correct in one thing, in that Chinese influence has been growing in Africa. Yes. So what does the United States now do to counter that?
I think the United States need to focus a little more on Africa. You know, there are many people who are disappointed that at a time when the president of the United States is a son of Africa, his father is Kenyan, many Africans have been disappointed that in the 4.5 years he's been in power, they haven't seen as much as they wanted. Now, I don't always agree with them, because President Obama happens to be the president of the United States, not of Africa, but at the same time, American businesses, American government relationships, even the African-American community in the United States, they need to, so to speak, raise their game and engage Africa more. The Chinese are more active in Africa than the Americans, and that puzzles some of us.
Okay, we've got less than a minute. There's one issue I want to address. There's a number of conflict areas in Africa. I mean, we've got the situation in Congo, in South Sudan, Guinea-Bissau. But the one I want to look at is the crackdown by the Nigerian government now on Boko Haram. These are the Islamic militants who are trying to create a separate state in Nigeria. There are allegations that Nigerian forces may have committed human rights violations there. Is this something that John Kerry is going to be addressing with the
I hope he does. And if I had to guess, I will say he will, because, you know, he made a statement here in Washington even before he left that he was concerned about the dropping of bombs on Boko Haram enclaves. But at the same time, this is a very difficult issue for Nigeria to deal with, because Boko Haram comes out of the woodworks and they kill fellow Nigerians. They refuse to negotiate. They refuse to accept amnesty. So this is a very difficult problem. I hope the international community, the US, the Europeans, and the Chinese, I hope all of them help Nigeria, in particular with intelligence, because I think that's the one missing piece for them to get hold of the problem.
Yeah, you know, in the past, the African Union, or what it used to be known as then as the OAU, didn't address conflicts because it caused divisions in the organization. So they kind of avoided discussing these things. This time, are they going to be discussing this?
I hope so, and I think so, and I think that's a reminder that Actually, the Africa Union, the predecessor OAU, has achieved some good things. They have, in my view, they have placed a huge and correct emphasis on democracy. They don't want undemocratic regimes taking over, and they have said that conflict spills over, and therefore it is everybody's problem. I mean, the case of Mali is a perfect example. The ECOWAS and the Africa Union all got involved, and they all have troops there trying to shore up a fellow African country under stress. So I think that's a good thing.
Yeah. At the end of this conference that is going to be taking place in Addis Ababa, what do you think will come out of it? I mean, in the past we've heard lots of very profound statements that come out, nothing much is done. But this time we've got someone like Nkosazana Zuma, who's now heading the African Union, a very strong woman, a strong leader. She's going to push for actual real change.
Yes, and you know, we hope that you know, as we began this conversation, you mentioned the hope at the beginning of the formation of the OAU. So there's been hope. We hope that this time that hope will be translated into real positive action at the end of the conference.
Nii Akuetteh, thanks for joining us, sir.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.